station, 630 KHOW.
You know, it's kind of ironic given the subject of Dave Rubin's, well, his current life's work and his new book, that I find myself just taking a breath like, I know right now I'm going to talk to someone who I actually kind of agree with. Not kind of. I agree with on almost everything. Because there is a certain aspect of life these days where you just feel like so many people, especially if you're not a leftist, you feel like if you have a conversation with someone who is even slightly left, that they look at you and they don't just think you're wrong, they think you're bad. And it's just draining, even though I know they're wrong. So it doesn't mean I think they're bad. So I've been so looking forward to having this conversation with Dave Rubin, arguably the most successful guy on YouTube talking about first principles like free speech. Of course, he hosts the Rubin Report on YouTube, about 1.2 million subscribers, 250 million views. So, Dave, first of all, thanks for being here and congratulations on your success.
Ross, I appreciate it, and I am going to try to find something we disagree on here. That will be the key to this entire interview, because that's more fun. That's more fun.
Well,
but truly, I mean, you know, in a time of unreason, which is, you know, what the subtitle of the book gets to, just a little common sense apparently is very dangerous, because I don't think any of the political positions that I hold, or even any of the really underlying philosophies that I talk about, are truly dangerous if people were just thinking straight. And unfortunately, we live in a time when people aren't thinking straight.
That's for sure. And by the way, Dave's new book is called Don't This Book. It's got a clever picture of a match on it. The match has not been lit yet, I note, and the subtitle, Thinking for Yourself in an Age of Unreason. You know, a lot of people do want to light that match, Dave.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, it's funny because as we speak right now, the book came out a week ago yesterday, and it's doing incredibly well. We're at the top of all the relevant charts, but there is a massive, massive coordinated campaign from the trolls and the bots and the whole thing to crush our reviews on Amazon and everywhere else. And, of course, they don't even buy the book. They just write awful things, and they try to, you know, make your stars go down so that other people won't. And, in effect, that proves the thesis of the book, because when I titled it "Don't Burn This Book," I didn't think we were in 1941 Germany where people were going to actually start doing bonfires where they're burning books. But a new type of book burning is when you hear an idea that you don't like, you go out of your way to make sure that that idea, in this case a book, is silenced. And how do you do that? Well, you mob the Amazon reviews, whatever the online retailers are, and you try to suppress, you know, the other points of view, which are people that are saying, oh, I enjoyed this and I found it thoughtful and interesting and the rest of it. So in effect, the trolls and everybody going after it, it's like, you guys are proving my point. You know, if you attack the ideas, if you counter the ideas, let's have a discussion about it. That's what I do for a living. But if your goal is just to sort of take out my livelihood and everything else, I mean, I think this is why people are afraid of the mob. But my book is designed as a bulwark, basically, against the mob.
Those who watch the Rubin Report know your story fairly well, very well, but maybe not everybody listening to us this morning knows the Rubin Report yet. So even though you specifically avoid going into this too much in your book, just give us very briefly how you got from being a young, idealistic leftist, like so many young idealistic people are, to being a libertarian conservative.
Sure. Well, you know, most people, I think, grow up sort of with that idealist leftist view of the world. And that's kind of just the way culture and the media, it all sort of teaches us those factory settings, sort of like, oh, Democrat good, Republican bad, lefties care about poor people, Republicans care about money. You know, people on the left or liberals want peace, Republicans and conservatives want war. It's a bunch of like factory setting stuff that doesn't really make sense. And once you start thinking about it, you break out of it pretty quickly. And yeah, I was a full-on lefty. I worked at a far-left YouTube network. And basically a few incidences that I lay out in the book happened. And once you wake up, it crumbles very quickly because, in short, what happened was I started realizing, you know, it can't be possible that everybody that I agree with is a good guy, and everyone that I disagree with is a racist and a bigot and a homophobe and the rest of it. Like, that equation is just too simple. It's too obvious. It doesn't make sense. And then once I woke up and started discussing that, what I was shocked to find out was that the left was suddenly going to attack me in a way I had never been attacked before. I mean, just every which way, from personal friends to the online mob to the whole thing. And then suddenly the right, the conservatives and the libertarians, were just like, hey, we're over here. We'll agree to disagree, whatever it is. Let's sit down and talk and treat each other respectfully. And it's been a shock to see that. And I think I've been very open about my journey, and that's why people care about what I do.
Twice in your last comment, you used the term "woke up." When I woke up, I assume, given what you do for a living, that you choose your words carefully. Do you feel, in a way, like you were asleep before when you were a liberal?
Yeah. Well, I do choose my words carefully. That's one of the lessons I learned from Jordan Peterson, actually, when we were on tour together. But, there's this idea that if you're woke, you sort of fit all of the left's current ideas. You believe in intersectionality. You believe in identity politics, that we should just group each other by these immutable characteristics. And, black people should think this and gay people should think this. And it's very anti-human, actually, because I would only want to be judged by my words and my actions, not because I'm X, Y, or Z, or I was born this way, or I, have this skin color or something. But that's considered woke. They call themselves woke, and I would say I went from woke to awake. And I'll give you one sci-fi metaphor on that. It's basically, Neo in the Matrix. Remember that moment when Morpheus is showing him the red pill and the blue pill, and he says, "Look, you could take the blue pill and sleep forever and never know the truth. Or you can take the red pill, you'll know the truth, but life's going to be a lot harder because living in truth is a lot more difficult." And in effect, he takes the red pill, which has now become a huge meme in and of itself, and then he knows what reality is. But, when you know what reality is, it is going to be a little bit tougher than just sleepwalking through life.
My special guest, Dave Rubin, hosts the Rubin Report on YouTube. About 1.25 million subscribers. His new book, as Dave says, leading all the important lists. Don't burn this book. Thinking for yourself in an age of unreason. In part of the book, I'm looking right now. You're talking the page I'm looking at here about firearms, gun control, self-defense. But you go through a lot of policy areas. If you had to pick one or two that you think are, I want to make sure I word this properly, one or two that if you understand them, then that means you are getting a firm grasp on the kinds of first principles that you really need. What would you think are the one or two policy areas that you would encourage people to really think about and awaken to?
Yeah, well, look, first principles, First Amendment. I mean, people are very confused as to what our actual rights are here in America. We have the First Amendment, which allows you to, in effect, say whatever you want with the tiniest bits of guardrails around that, meaning we have seriously strict laws about libel and slander, intentionally lying or printing something about somebody. And then, beyond that, you're not allowed to incite violence against specific people, a specific person or a group of people. And you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, with the intent of, causing chaos. Beyond that, you can say whatever you want. That is such an absolutely beautiful thing. And people are very confused about it. And in the book, I talk about how during the whole Colin Kaepernick thing with the NFL, that, people kept saying, Kaepernick's free speech rights are being stamped on, and the fans' free speech rights, and everyone. This is such a terrible example of free speech. And what I lay out in the book is that actually everyone exercised their free speech perfectly. Kaepernick was allowed to kneel or not kneel and say whatever he wants, but that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be repercussions. Now, if the government had stopped him, that would have been a problem. But in effect, the team then can say, oh, this is costing us money or not, and we can decide what to do. The fans then get to voice their opinion by either going to games and buying merchandise or not. By the way, President Trump also has a First Amendment right, so he can say what he wants about Kaepernick. Everyone got to say what they want. All the ESPN anchors, everybody said what they wanted, and nobody was, dragged off. And it was actually a beautiful example of us all using our free speech. Now, you may not like the outcome. Maybe you wish Kaepernick had stayed with the 49ers or was still in the NFL, but those are business decisions that are outside of the free speech realm. So we should be careful when we think that, oh, just because something's not going our way, that it's an infringement on our free speech rights, because everyone in America right now, and I would put one little caveat here is we have an issue with big tech related to what they're letting us say. But basically, everyone can say what they want without fear of reprisal from the government. What I'm more concerned about right now is that good people are silencing themselves. I have no doubt that every single person listening to this holds some political belief that is not, sort of in the mainstream progressive dogma. That might be states' rights or low taxes or something else. And they're afraid to say it because they know what the mob's going to do to them. And I lay out really tips and tricks to survive the mob, because either you survive it or you end up as the frog in the slowly boiling pot. And as I've been saying, doesn't end well for the frog.
You tell a remarkable story, and I watched your recent conversation with a gentleman, Douglas Murray. Is that his name? Just recently.
Great
and
thinker out of the UK, one of the best.
And you talk about this comparison between people who come out of the closet as gay and come out of the closet as non-leftist. And just thinking about that historically, I mean, I'm a little older than you. When I was a kid, if somebody came out of the closet as gay, that would have been a very difficult thing, and the world didn't necessarily treat gay people very kindly, but you could have said almost anything politically. And thinking back to the founding of our country, I don't need to explain this to you, but the debates between the Federalists and the Republicans and all this, I mean, that stuff was heated, and the disagreements were about as big as political disagreements could be, like, should we stay part of England or not? Huge stuff. And now it's the opposite. And I'm glad that it's very easy for people to come out as gay and be whoever they want to be. I'm a libertarian. That's all fine with me. But it is so dangerous how the other side has changed, where I know I'm rambling here, Dave. When Tucker Carlson,
I'm with you.
When Tucker Carlson, in his blurb about your book, says Dave Rubin is one of the bravest. I know. Okay, good. I'm glad you're smart. But why the hell does Dave Rubin need to be brave?
Well, that is an interesting question. I mean, why is it that laying out common sense ideas, which is all that I lay out in this book? I mean, the thesis of the book, in essence, is I want you to live the life that you want to live. I want you to keep more of the money you earn. I want you to figure out what type of community you want to live in. I want you to be governed as much locally as possible and not just feed all of this power to the federal government. And as you laid out right there, the founders were grappling with all of these huge issues. Should we stay part of England or not? Should the federal government really govern us, or should it be about the states? Fortunately, they gave most of the power to the states. So there are these huge issues that we should be talking about. And yet, unfortunately, the political closet, which is where you started here, I think has become sort of, in many ways, the biggest unspoken political group in the United States today. Look, there are people who are proudly Democrats. There are people who are proudly Republicans and are happy to yell about it. And I'm not even saying there's anything wrong with either one of those positions. But I think that most of us, just because you happen to be gay, let's say, or for gay marriage, that doesn't mean that you have to be for high taxes. You could still be for low taxes. You could still be for gun rights. So we've created this odd situation where it seems like, you have to pick all of these things on one side or all of these things on the other. And what I think is that you could pick 4 or 5 from this side, 4 or 5 from this side, and make some sense of it. What I think is that if you're really thinking clearly, most of those things will drive you to the libertarian conservative side of the issue, especially because the social issues have sort of melted away. So there is a newer alignment happening right now. And I would say that the future of America lies within the sort of center-right political situation, because that's where most people just want to live their lives. They want to live and let live. We've let the woke progressive thing run ramshot across us for, about 5-6 years now. And I think people have just had it. And in a time of coronavirus, it's like people really have had it, because a lot of the identity politics stuff seems completely ridiculous right now, because we're more concerned about the economy and whether we can step outside of our houses.
Yeah, and for the record, you just described me, right? I'm for gay marriage, I'm for low taxes, and I've got my most recent AR-15 purchase on the couch behind me.
I love it. That's it. That's a beautiful thing.
Well, I'm a Jewish libertarian, so what are you going to do? I don't know why more Jews don't take self-defense seriously. My special guest is Dave Rubin. His new book is Don't Burn This Book, and everybody should watch the Rubin Report on YouTube. All right, in our last couple minutes together, let's move away a little bit from philosophy and history. I want your practical advice for people who, whether or not they share our views, hold views that they think society might frown on these days. Practical advice on how to really live your life, as you put it, without apology.
Yeah, so this really is the reason that I wrote the book more than anything else. The political parts and when I lay out policy and things like that, that's interesting, obviously, and I talk about a lot of that stuff publicly, and I interview people about those things. But this is it, like the practical, tangible steps that you can take to start being braver in your own life. You know, a couple little things are, one is, you know, just be a little bit better than your ideological opponents. And that's not that hard to do, actually. You know, there's a certain set of people who, no matter what you say, are going to shout you down, yell at you, call you all these names. Don't fall into the trap of doing the same thing with them. You know, keep extending that hand. Now, that doesn't mean be an endless pushover, but if you keep extending that hand, if you subtly try to bring them across, say, hey, you know, I know we don't agree on this specific thing, but, you know, here's this PragerU video. It's only 4 minutes. It's animated. Thought maybe you could take a look. Let me know what you think. You know, if you try to hand them some things without drubbing them over the head, and I think one of the real big keys is you have to, and I talk about this a little bit later in the book, is that we all look at the world through our own political lens. And because the left is more emotional and less fact-based, don't think that you can get them with facts. So even if you know your facts, right, and you go, oh, here are the 10 things that you're wrong, they don't really respond to that. So you may have to try something a little more emotional. So there might be some YouTube videos that could be worthy, some podcasts. And then really more than anything else is you must understand they can't take us all out. They can't take us all out, but they prey on the fact that they've silenced a lot of us. And that's why they're always going after Tucker Carlson. That's why they're going after me. It's because there aren't that many of us speaking up. And what we need, if you want to live in a free country, I mean, just think about your grandparents. Think about your great-grandparents. If you live in America, you got it a hell of a lot better than they did. There's just no doubt about it, because that's how beautiful and wonderful our country is. And it's on you to understand what they went through. And then you got to be brave, too. You know, both of my grandfathers fought in World War II. Like, I haven't had to fight in a war, but there's an ideological war to fight, and I'm going to give it everything I got.
And you do every day. Dave Rubin's new book is called Don't Burn This Book, Thinking for Yourself in an Age of Unreason. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, Dave. Please keep doing what you're doing.
Likewise, and stick with the gun, and you're going to be all right.
You got it. Thank you. Wow. All right. That was a great conversation. It is, I'll tell you, it is really nice to just talk to someone that you agree with, because even as Dave is writing about, you know, thinking for yourself and not apologizing for your views, and I do those things, but still every once in a while it is nice to, it's why I love getting together with listeners, actually. It's nice just to be able to have a conversation and know that you're not going to be beaten over the head about what you believe. Even at other times you might want to go out and pick that intellectual fight or have an intellectual debate. Not every day and not all the time. We'll be right back with Dr. David Opperman.
This is Denver's Talk Station with Ross Kaminsky now. Dan Kaplis today at 4, 630 KHOW, Denver.